Once in a quiet valley, there lived a monk who spent his days peacefully farming carrots. But every single day, without fail, someone would sneak into his field and steal exactly 3 carrots, no more, no less. The monk tried everything to stop the thief. He stayed up at night, set traps, even asked the wind for guidance, yet the thief always escaped, vanishing into the distance with just 3 stolen carrots. What troubled the monk most wasn't just the theft, it was the precision. Always 3. Why not 1? Why not 5? One day, determined to find out, the monk gave chase. He ran across his fields, but the thief outran him effortlessly. Realizing he lacked speed, the monk began training. Day after day, he ran up hills and across valleys, pushing himself until he became the fastest monk in the land. The next time the thief came, the monk dashed after him, matching his pace. But then the thief leapt over a tall fence, and the monk stopped short. So he trained again, jumping over logs, walls, and temple roofs until he could leap higher than any man. When the thief returned, the monk was ready. He ran, he jumped the fence, but found himself at the edge of a wide lake. The thief dove in and swam with ease, while the monk stood helpless on the shore. So he trained once more, learning every stroke, braving cold rivers and rough waters until he became the best swimmer among monks. Again, he pursued the thief, over the fence, through the lake, only to face a steep mountain. The thief scaled it like a goat, but the monk could not follow. So he trained again, climbing cliffs, boulders, and temple towers until he was the finest mountaineer of them all. At last, the monk chased the thief across field, fence, lake, and mountain. At the summit, he blocked his path, only to be punched hard in the stomach. Winded and stunned, he realized there was one last skill to learn. He trained once more, this time in martial arts. He built strength, discipline, and calm. When the thief came again, the monk was ready. He chased him flawlessly across every obstacle and stopped him at the top with a single, perfect punch. Finally, he asked, "Why only 3 carrots?" The thief grinned. "I'll tell you," he said, "but only if you promise never to reveal it." And true to his word, the monk never did. A woman returns home one day to find her apartment building engulfed in flames. Fire trucks and police cars crowd the street, and barricades keep everyone at a distance. Panic-stricken, she pushes through the crowd, shouting that her husband is still inside. A firefighter stops her, gentle but firm. He tells her the blaze was devastating. No one survived. She collapses in tears, insisting she has to find him. The firefighter explains that the bodies recovered are severely burned, blackened beyond recognition, and cannot be identified. But the woman refuses to be consoled. "I've been married to that man for 20 years, she sobs. "I know every part of him. I'll recognize him no matter what." Eventually, they let her through. She approaches the first body bag, unzips it, and reaches straight down to the man's private parts. She pauses. Nope, not him. She moves to the second bag. Same process. Still not him? Then she opens the third bag, checks again, and frowns. "Definitely not my husband," she says. "He doesn't even live in this building." A cowboy, weary from a long ride, rolls into a dusty little town. Looking to quench his thirst, he ties up his horse outside the saloon and strolls in, boots clinking against the wooden floor. The locals eye him with suspicion, like he's a storm on the horizon, but he pays them no mind. He heads to the bar and orders a beer. The bartender pops the cap, slides the bottle over, and leans in. "Word of advice," he says. "Folks around here don't take kindly to strangers. They tend to make things difficult. And you, my friend, stick out like a fresh tumbleweed in spring." The cowboy takes a slow sip, rests his chin on his fist, and replies, "That's so?" The bartender shrugs and walks away. 10 minutes later, the cowboy finishes his drink and steps outside, only to find his horse gone. He storms back into the saloon, draws his revolver, and fires a shot into the ceiling. The room freezes. "All right," he growls. "Which one of you sidewinders stole my horse?" Silence. No one moves. "Fine," he says. "I'm gonna sit down, finish another drink, and when I walk out again, if my horse still ain't there, I'm gonna have to do what I did back in Texas. And believe me, I don't want to do what I did in Texas." He calmly sits, orders another beer, drinks it in silence, then heads outside. Sure enough, his horse is back, waiting patiently. As he rides out of town, the bartender runs after him. "Hey, mister, what exactly did you do in Texas?" The cowboy turns in the saddle. "I walked." A young man once met a stunningly beautiful woman and agreed to spend the night with her for $500. After their evening together, he admitted he didn't have the cash on him but promised to have his secretary mail her a check. To keep things discreet, he said he'd list the payment as rent for an apartment. The next morning, however, he began to rethink things. He decided the experience hadn't quite been worth the full amount, so he instructed his secretary to send a check for only $250 along with a note. In it, he wrote that when he agreed to rent the apartment, he had expected it to be unoccupied, warm, and cozy. But to his surprise, it had clearly been used before, lacked any heat, and felt too large and empty. A few days later, the woman returned the check with a message of her own. She wrote that expecting a beautiful apartment to remain unoccupied was unrealistic. As for the heat, she noted it was available. He just didn't know how to turn it on. Regarding the space, she explained the apartment was perfectly normal in size. If he didn't have enough furniture to fill it, that wasn't the landlady's fault. She ended by politely requesting the remaining $250, or she'd be forced to speak with his current landlady. Johnny asks his mom, "When I grow up, will I have two willies like Daddy?" Mom replies, "Daddy doesn't have two." Johnny says, "Sure he does. He has the little soft one he uses to pee out of, and the massive hard one he uses to brush the babysitter's teeth with." During Jimmy's visit to Santa at the mall, things took a wildly unexpected turn. What began as a cheerful moment ended with Santa shouting, "No!" at the top of his lungs and storming off, leaving a stunned crowd and dozens of tearful kids in his wake. When asked what had happened, Jimmy, still a bit shaken, tried to explain. He said things started off normally. Santa asked the usual questions, and Jimmy answered like any well-behaved kid. Then Santa asked, "Who's your favorite U.S. president?" Jimmy answered, "Obama." Santa paused, then asked, "And your second favorite?" Jimmy, trying to be helpful, rattled off more names. Lincoln, both Roosevelts, Woodrow Wilson, Biden, even Nixon and the Bushes. One by one, he listed nearly every president he could think of. According to Jimmy, Santa's face grew redder with each name. Finally, Santa exploded into a full-blown rant, declaring that no president compared to Donald J. Trump. He blamed the fake lying liberal media and insisted he'd seen every president, personally. Trying to defuse the situation, Jimmy leaned in and calmly whispered, "Mr. Trump, may I please have my present now?" And that's when Santa completely lost it. There once was a boy named George Gunderson who struggled terribly in school. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to keep up. His classmates teased him relentlessly, and worst of all, his teacher, Mrs. Jones, often mocked him in front of the class. She'd call him names, belittle his efforts, and make him feel small. George would come home in tears, defeated and ashamed. One day, after overhearing George sobbing in his room, his parents decided they'd had enough. They marched to the school just before the final bell. As the classroom door swung open and students spilled out, they heard Mrs. Jones shouting, "George Gunderson, you are the dumbest kid in the world!" Outraged, Mr. and Mrs. Gunderson burst into the classroom. "Our son is not dumb," they told her. "He's kind, thoughtful, and full of potential." Mrs. Jones sneered. "He has no potential. He was born an idiot, and he'll die one." That week, the Gundersons packed their bags and left town, settling in Chicago for a fresh start. 30 years later, Mrs. Jones was diagnosed with a rare illness. Her only hope was a renowned specialist based in Chicago, Dr. Gunderson. Desperate, she flew there and was admitted under his care. He placed her on life support and began treatment immediately. One day, as she regained some strength, she looked at him curiously and asked, "Doctor, I don't believe you ever told me your first name." Dr. Gunderson opened his mouth to answer, but suddenly the machines began to beep wildly. Mrs. Jones collapsed. Across the room, the janitor stood frozen, holding the plug to the life support system in one hand and the cord to his vacuum in the other. He had accidentally unplugged the machine. Dr. Gunderson rushed to her side. He looked down at her lifeless body, then over to the janitor. "George," he said, sighing, "sometimes I still can't believe you're my brother." A teenage boy ran excitedly to his father and said, "Dad, I've fallen in love. She's amazing, and I want to ask her out." His father smiled and asked, "That's wonderful, son. Who's the lucky girl?" "Tina, the neighbor's daughter," the boy replied. Suddenly, his father's expression changed. "Oh, no, son. I wish you hadn't said that. I have to tell you something, but you must never mention it to your mother. Tina is actually your sister." Shocked, the boy walked away, heartbroken. A few weeks later, he returned. "Dad, I found someone else. Her name's Penny, and she's even more amazing." The father sighed heavily. "Son, Penny is also your sister." This happened again and again. Every time the boy mentioned a new crush from the neighborhood, his father would pull him aside and whisper, "She's your sister too." Devastated, the boy finally broke down and ran to his mother. "Mom," he cried, "I've fallen for 6 different girls, and Dad says I can't date any of them because he's their father." His mother paused, then gently pulled him into a hug. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "you can date whoever you like. Don't worry about your father. He's not even yours."